So welcome to another episode of Simon Says. And Lyra, we have to talk about what just took place a few days ago, right?
Yes.
20th of January, the inauguration of President Donald Trump. And I was just kind of review all the episodes we've been doing in 2024. I think half the episodes we kind of focused on the American elections. And I think we need to remind our viewers and listeners why we're doing that. And it's really because, even the last few days, I've seen a lot of report about what President Trump is going to do or already has been doing. And even Free Malaysia Today, all the newspapers are reporting the various articles. And I think we've been saying, right, there is a great consequences. We believe is for the better, but you can see there is some sort of groaning on the ground, especially in Asia.
Yeah, I guess it's because people don't quite understand the implication.
Exactly. And during dinner time, we're just talking about the chief editor of Breitbart, Alex Marlow, and he has his own podcast, which I highly recommend because it's very clear, very succinct. And he was like, many people, not necessarily they are against MAGA or things like that, but because of the global media, mainstream media, people sort of like, always think MAGA as extreme right, very destructive. But all of a sudden you see President Biden was there, or the ex-president, they were treating Trump with utmost respect. You know what happened to the Hitler they claim he was? So people start to have that veil taken off of them and realize, hey, maybe what the mainstream media has been saying is not true at all. And I think a couple of episodes ago, we kind of look at the confidence rating of media is all-time low, right? It's even lower than Congress. So Alex Marlow was just saying that there are people, maybe they just suddenly came and realized, hey, maybe this MAGA is not so bad, and he wanted to kind of like give an introduction. So I kind of think our show is a little bit like that, even though at all times we try to bring back to what it is all about in terms of the consequence and impact for Malaysia. So I think for today, we're just going to look at the inauguration. We can talk about what happened then, some of the policies. And to start off with, just the introduction. On day one, Donald Trump already kept 46 promises on day one. And how many politicians can say that, right? So maybe, Lara, let me begin by asking what kind of, so many things have happened, but what kind of struck you and what excites you the most?
Well, I think it is very bold of him to actually reverse what the previous president has done, especially like he received like almost 78 orders from President Biden. And it's really, really interesting because, if people would have listened to his speech, which is kind of like relatively shorter than what he would normally deliver during the inauguration, and about like 29 minutes. And part of it, he actually sort of like, I think he had to blast how bad it was, Joe Biden's policy, and because of that. But he also went into the very pragmatic side of basically saying that this is what we're going to do immediately. So he reversed many of those very DEI driven. And I felt like the DEI portion is what I was most excited for, because basically I think what he's saying is that we're going to be like colorblind. I think that's such a politically incorrect sort of statement to say. And a lot of us, I think, especially Malaysians, I think we would be like mind blown just thinking about all this thing, because we are so used to affirmative action, so used to just having a certain color being highlighted. And to say that, hey, we're going to have a government policy that focuses on colorblind and basically on merit basis, I think that's something that is a bit bizarre for Malaysians to even begin to comprehend. And yet it is something that is so exciting because we could maybe perhaps see a glimpse of how it is going to be like, because US is known as the rainbow nation, and Malaysia is also known as that rainbow nation because we have so much cultural, so rich with all these different culture, different races. And that is something that I felt as a Malaysian, I'm very, very excited.
It's very interesting you talk about merit, because I remember once upon a time, our Prime Minister, current Prime Minister, also talked about we need to deal with all the problems and issues, from the need point of view, need basis point of view. And he kind of hinted merits. But of course, he has since gone back to all these things. But do you think in general, if in Malaysia we talk about we need to deal with merits, people won't disagree, right?
Yeah, I don't think, especially private industries, I don't think they will disagree because especially when profitability, revenue, all this thing is being affected. And I mean, if you take away sort of like government compliance where you need to have like a certain quota, a certain ratio,
Yep.
I think people will begin to look at, hey, what's the profitability? What's the revenue? What's the results? What are the skill sets that are required? So irrespective of where you come from, irrespective of your color, that will be the main driving force in terms of hiring. So I don't think people generally are thinking about a certain color per se when you think about hiring. I think it's more like you need to fulfill a certain role and things like that or function, then people hunt for the right sort of person because the higher you go up the corporate ladder, people look for you. I mean, you don't necessarily go for interviews and things like that. People look for you because of what you have done. So I think it's just that when it comes to government civil service, we begin to like see, hey, there must be a certain sort of protection that is being set out. So then we begin to think, why aren't these people hired in the private sectors?
Yeah, and also in Malaysia and also in US, I think the arena that has been plagued the most by affirmative action, of course they call it DEI there, is really education. So the whole Supreme Court case that smacked DEI was actually from, the Harvard, Princeton, all their admissions, where they sort of, where they sort of favor the minority, the color and people and things like that. And so remember leading up to the inauguration of President Trump, so many companies, talk about Pepsi, Boeing, IBM, everyone. I think the only one kind of like still doubling down is Google, Facebook. They all kind of like want to, FBI kind of want to close down the DEI. Because when you think about the American spirit, the can-do spirit, the American dream, DEI is really very offensive. And very interesting, Alex Marlowe, I think he'll be between our age, sort of like maybe, you are the millennial, right? So I think he'll be like early millennial. And he was like, when he was young, he was told, their generation was told, America is not great, but it's not bad, neutral. So kind of like, don't try to promote yourself as superior and things like that. But of course, in recent time, we know with the critical race theory, they try to say that everything was bad. That is a whole basis for DEI because everything is bad. Now we need to promote the color people. We need to promote female. We need to have quota in board and things like that. So that's a whole thing which Malaysians, we are all, very, very familiar. But it's basically anti-productivity, right, at the end of the day. And it doesn't help a nation to advance.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that you mentioned what Alex Marlowe was taught to believe, where you are neither called to be great nor bad. That's all. Like you're gonna just called to be like mediocre and average. And I think that's something that is very relevant here as well, where as we aspire to be more pro-Western in a lot of sense, we also sort of like bought into this whole sort of globalist crap where we think it's okay to just be average. It's okay to just be middle class. And when the government is taking away certain rights, you just felt like, okay, well, I can find other ways to do it. I mean, I don't necessarily have to be billionaire, but what if you're called to be a billionaire? So I think people don't think about the sort of calling or sort of destiny. So which makes President Trump's inauguration address so interesting also because one of the things that he mentioned was that we're going to put stars and stripes on Mars. And that's just something like what, I mean, I was just reminded of what JF Kennedy mentioned. I mean, like literally you have like the youngest ever generation that is in the whole of NASA. And so that's the sort of things that are very, very exciting. And to think that a billionaire, I mean, a person of such stature will begin to think about like just average American, and he sort of like make normal again, that like these are the normies. And because when you look at like JD Vance, such a young family, I mean, he even had like his very, very young daughter just kind of like still sucking on her thumb and literally like attending attending his swearing in as a vice president. So it's something that I guess we're like so used to seeing a lot of old politicians here in Malaysia as well,
Yep.
where we don't think that, hey, I mean, if we're not at that age, maybe it's something that we think of when we might want to when we might want to retire, I suppose. But we don't think about like, hey, you could actually be a prime minister maybe if in the 40s, 30s. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, we have seen some, after COVID, like Austria, a few nations have very, very young leaders. Now, of course, people say Donald Trump is old, but his cabinet is very young. I mean, talking about, Rubio, has Seth, all those people are young, relatively young. It's like, some are between our age, which is, I'll consider young, right?
Very, very mind-blowing, yes.
And since you talk about globalists, which is very interesting, because one of the things that I've been paying attention, of course, is the response of Malaysia. And our Prime Minister right now is in Switzerland, Davos. Davos will be the most globalist response. But interestingly, many top leaders are not attending Davos this year, and for one reason or another. But our Prime Minister gave an interview to Global Financial Times, and he kind of now because Malaysia has been selected as the head of ASEAN for the next 2 or 3 years. So I think he kind of felt like he represent that voice, but one of the things he talked about.
I suppose it's also because he's the finance minister.
Yeah, I guess, and he was like, okay, let me just try to bring the article up to speed, and one of the things he said, and I quote from Financial Times: "Global trade will survive initial shock of Donald Trump's rule," said Malaysia Prime Minister. So I mean, I thought it was quite okay. He wasn't like attacking Trump or the West. He's like trying to play safe between China and America. But of course, he kind of hinted that Americans have neglected ASEAN, and that's why everyone is like going into BRICS and things like that. Then, of course, the other thing, which then he was at Davos. Again, look at what he said. Quote, in his interview, he said, "Pragmatic dialogue, collaboration, key to navigating complex global." You see, again, the word global. And when you were talking about the whole globalist, it kind of made me think, what is the problem of globalists? Why is it a problem? I think it's a problem. I mean, of course, this is a very simplistic discussion. You see, the global order will be like, well, you have China doing the manufacturing. We will take manufacturing out from Europe, from US, so you all don't need to think about manufacturing anymore because other countries can do it. You just focus on certain things. But when COVID came, many nations start to realize, hey, we cannot, key things, like health, like medicine, we cannot just rely on India, Pakistan for the generic drugs and things like that. So when you talk about destiny, it kind of make me think, when everyone, the globalist is trying to say, look, manufacturing will never go back to US. You will never make cars again. And basically, Donald Trump is coming back and say, why shouldn't we make cars? We are pioneer in car. We make the best cars in the world. You try me. Basically, it's like you want to make cars in Mexico, I'll put 100% tariff. You try me. And people are very offended by that. So why? Why are people offended by that? It's almost like they felt a natural right to rip off from the American. Did you feel that with the globalists? Like European Union kind of have this kind of tone. Come to talk about funding for NATO, funding for Ukraine. And, that's why so much moaning and crying when Trump signed the EO to pull America out from WHO, Paris Accord, because it's all about money, 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 and money. And I remember Trump was saying, well, we had 300 million people in US, we pay 30 million. China has 1.5, 1.6 billion. They pay 5 million or something. That's not fair. It's like, I think the basis is, why should the world rip America off?
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting because all this thing happened since World War II.
Yes, correct.
Obviously, Americans, they are superpower because, obviously,
at that time, they were the least affected nation on earth.
But I think they are also, I guess it's not wrong to flex your strength, but I guess we are just sort of taught to, I mean, we're so acceptance towards, well, the handout cultures. I think so. That's why we do think that, hey, it is okay. I mean, it is, I deserve this because
Yep.
I didn't ask to be born to maybe an average sort of family or maybe poor family. It's the system that is causing me to be like that. So therefore, I demand X, Y, Z. But when you don't even want to put in the effort, I think what makes United States so interesting is that they are and very, very industrious sort of people, and they basically just welcome creativity to come back into the land again. Because when you sort of, I wouldn't say even close out the competition, you're kind of like actually freeing out, like that's why it's called like Liberation Day on Inauguration Day itself. So when you have all this creativity that is just coming in so freely, so liberated, people begin to like be more, well, basically you can just like be very, very innovative with what you have, and because of that the whole nation prospers. So I think we just don't think about how we can actually break out of sort of systemic poverty, and we're just so used to like systemic corruption that we don't think it is possible that I'm just entitled. So I guess we are like just a whole generation of spoiled brats.
Yeah, I guess the world has felt very entitled. Now, of course, after the World War II, I mean, it's a whole long analysis. The world is in need, and America was in a position to help. And even today, many, many, many nations are still receiving aid from them. But in that process, their own people are suffering. The Rust states, and you can see nations like China, India. They are already, in tech manufacturing. They are already, you can say maybe eclipse America in certain way. So I think that is the motivation that they want to be great. They want to be a great nation. And what's wrong with that? And of course the leverage that, and I think we need to discuss this because it's all common sense. At the end of the day, Donald Trump is not a very complicated person. He's looking for the best deal, and if he felt you are ripping his nation off, he's going to come down hard on you. And America's strongest leverage remains they are the world's biggest market. You must sell to them, but they don't necessarily need to buy from you. So that's the whole principle of tariff. And you see the European Union, they started to see the logic. Sometimes when you're hurt, you see the logic and how they're going to navigate. That will be very interesting because you see, at the end of the day, I kept going back to what you say about potential. What if the potential is to be a great manufacturer? If Malaysia is to be a great manufacturer, and then suddenly you say, oh, Malaysian, you shouldn't be manufacturer because Vietnam is cheaper, Indonesia is cheaper. It's like, what if that is our greatest destiny? Why should we give up? You see, that's the whole thing. And if we're good with certain things, we should go for it. We shouldn't let other people take it.
That's true.
But anyway, we were just going off a bit tangent on the globalists. But what other things that kind of capture your imagination? Maybe I'll go to the next one. Then, so I remember I was talking to you and I said I felt one of the most important thing would be the January 6th event. And of course, people are like, January 6th, and people don't quite understand, 2021, when Biden won the last election, of course, many, many people felt there's something very off about the result. Look at the vote. Why did Biden got so many votes and those votes have disappeared before and after? Something is off, right? But anyway, we're not going to the conspiracy theory there today. But one of the things that really interesting, and I was just, it's like a true conservative. They are very restrained in law and things like that. In fact, they will come out and say you shouldn't do this kind of wide-ranging pardon and commutation. By the way, you know how many pardon and commutation he has signed? More than 1,500. In fact, some people even say it's a blanket pardon, but nobody can confirm that. I have been trying to find report, but for all intents and purposes, it looks like a blanket kind of pardon. And so one of the conservative commentator, Dinesh D'Souza, I think sometimes you have watched his video, used to be a ex-President Bush staff, and he's saying this: when you have a sham trial, that means the whole thing is rigged. Even if some people are guilty, you have no choice but to cancel everything. So it's like if you do a mock trial, like in Russia, in communist China, yeah, maybe some people are really guilty of certain crime, but because of the process, you have to invalidate the whole thing. So he is one of those rare conservative, I would say, who is in favor of blanket pardon. I mean, Dinesh, you will think that he is a bit more on the establishment side because of his history and things like that. But yeah, I'm very surprised he is. You know, him, Posobia, a few people, Bannon, very consistent. Then, of course, from Trump point of view, JD Vance came out a few days before and say, well, it should be looked case by case. So people kind of look at it and felt that Trump has betrayed. But actually, I think it's all part of the strategy. It's the impression. But so far, what I'm seeing is it looks like very, very blanket kind of thing. So this is a very, it's a personal passion for me because I really felt like we have seen the greatest level of lawlessness, you know, when government use law against your own citizen. That's why I remember we talked about a few times, they use a very obscure obstruction law. Obstruction law basically was created during Enron's time. You know, Enron, when the energy company collapsed and their vice president, you know, we're talking about COO, CFO, high-level people were shredding document. So when you have high-level people shredding, you are obstructing an investigation. Yep. So they created this obstruction law, which carry prison sentence up to 20 years to life sentence. It's very, very serious. So when the protesters were there on January 6th, the FBI, DOJ, they were arguing that these people are trying to obstruct the certifications of electoral college vote. I mean, talk about how absurd it is. So they begin to apply this law. So imagine, I think we mentioned this in the episode, but I think we had to illustrate. Let's say, Lara, you were there. You were just walking around. And in fact, remember one of the guy went to Pelosi's office and put his leg on his table. So that guy was free already. I just saw the news. And you remember the other guy with a costume, the unknown costume, he was free also. So all these high-profile people are free makes me think that it is really a blanket pardon. But Trump will not say it's blanket. But basically, everyone is off. But anyway, imagine you were there, walking around, and all of a sudden, they charge you with obstruction and say, well, if you go to trial, if the jury doesn't agree, and by the way, all these trials, the juries are Washington, D.C. juries, 99% Democrats juries. You are never going to get a fair trial. But anyway, imagine they say, well, obstruction, and well, if found guilty, 20 years in prison, or let me give you a deal now, 5 years. If you plead guilty, you get 5 years. I mean, what would you choose?
I mean, we'll all plead guilty.
Yeah, you take 5 years, right? I mean, it's like, of course, you don't want the 5 years, but when people think about it, 25, this is not casino, you know? So this is a thing that really pissed me off because it is really bad. So leading up to inauguration, I was looking very intently, and Trump has been very quiet. I mean, he mentioned it, but he was very quiet because he knew there will be backlash even from conservative people. But I really felt like he has done the right thing.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, well, I guess it's like because actually they did, the J6 committee did spend like the largest ever resources ever. I mean, to compare that with like, let's say BLM summer riots, I mean, shouldn't you spend more in that sort of riots, which is causing your whole nation to be in a dire sort of state, you know? Basically that whole event itself, BLM, just basically caused like so many people to be so divided, and they just felt like, I think it sort of further enhanced the DEI, the critical race theory, unintendedly. So I think with that, I mean, the government should have spent the resources even more wisely, and to think about that sort of, like what you mentioned, the sham sort of investigation, and spending so much. I think a full pardon is, I mean, a blanket sort of pardon is actually, I think I would take it.
Yeah, and really, I almost forgot about BLM. And that's the whole thing that makes the whole J6 wrong, because you never prosecute BLM, which was much, much worse.
Yeah, Antifa.
and so when you have this kind of double standard, you have to invalidate the whole thing. And I would say it takes great courage to do this pardon. Now, of course, the other person that he just pardoned today, not sure you heard about this guy, what's his name? Ross Albrecht. He's the founder of Silk Road. Now, Silk Road, of course, is a long ago story, but basically, at the early days of crypto, Bitcoin and things like that, there's like a forum, like, people can buy things. So he's just a facilitator. And then FBI, DOJ go and charge him, saying that he caused people to die from overdose, but they can't even prove that just by being the forum. So this has become like a rallying cry. Basically it's a case that says government is overreaching, over interfering, and excuse me, the cough is still here every time we do recording. And so Trump kind of vowed to free him, and today he just signed a pardon. But of course, I mean that we are just kind of oversimplifying the whole story. But what this shows is that there is a commitment when Donald Trump says he's going to, of course he's going to have big policies that will affect the nation, but he also wants the government to take a step back. Don't micromanage the life of people. So basically going back the American way, small government. So I think pardoning this Silk Road founder is one of the commitment, because the crypto community are very, he promised them that he would do that, and he really did it on day 2.
Yeah, I mean, I like what you mentioned, that the government shouldn't be micromanaging the people, because I mean, another executive order that he has signed, which I really, really like it, is there shouldn't be any government censorship. That is like, I mean, we have our Minister of Truth here. So I think yeah, I mean, imagine Malaysia will have this sort of things here. I think it will be so interesting. I mean, because you can't like forbid people from, well, basically people have the right to basically just put forth their opinion, put forth their mind in the social media. And I mean, now we are at the age of social media, so why the sort of like sakit hati, over all these sort of small little things.
And remember a while ago, Zuckerberg went to Joe Rogan and he said basically Facebook was forced. Now, of course, a lot of people kind of criticize him and say, well, Facebook, actually you were all about censoring and things like that. But I do believe there is a degree of coercion by the government, depending on who is the government. So you can see even in Malaysia now with our Minister of Truth and things like that, government is wanting to, just clamp down. So even now, they like Bersih, they all wanted to do a rally against corruption. And look at the Pakatan Harapan ministers, they are talking like snakes. So I don't blame, and there's 1 or 2 DAP people come out and just say, look, don't do this, But I'm just surprised, it's like, did you not ever learn? And since we talk about Pakatan, one of the things I really felt with Trump's victory this time, and even with the inauguration, if you look at all the all the newspaper that typically criticize him, or media, CNN, all those, they are sort of a bit subdued. And I think because they knew the crowd is against them. So kind of reminded me of 2018. Remember when Pakatan Harapan took over the government? It's almost like a 6-month to 1 year period where they could do no wrong. There is just such a tremendous goodwill. Remember every day Mahathir was there and people were asking him questions about this and that. And he always came up with the right answer, while everything were to go back and talk with the Pakatan partners and things like that. I mean, now you think about it, it's like just load of bullshit. But he was able to project that kind of thing. And I remember people like are greeting each other, Salam Malaysia Baru and things like that. Really, of course, I think something really shifted. We have a peaceful transition, but people didn't realize that so much unraveling, undoing needs to be done. So we missed that opportunity. So I really felt, especially what Trump is trying to do worldwide now. It's not like he wanted to have a worldwide impact. I don't think he purposely want to interfere. But when you talk about DEI, you talk about woke, talking about nations having their own strong economy, talking about don't submit to globalist organization like WHO, Paris Accord, things like that, peace through strength, doing Abraham Accord, all these kind of things. I think he, of course, is America first, but it's having a great impact all around the world. So will will people take advantage of the goodwill? Now, of course, you have ads being free, TikTok giving a bit of reprieve, and suddenly, he kind of say he called President Xi, right? And he didn't say the content, but he hinted that he will allow TikTok to operate if 50% ownership will be divest to another place. And the next thing he said, well, I will be open to Elon Musk owing that. It's like, wow, it's like you have ads already, then you have TikTok, Zuckerberg, all those people won't be happy. But it's all talk, Trump is all about let's explore all the deal. But kind of, again, Alex Marlow, I just highly recommend his podcast because he make one thing, because in inauguration, do you realize on the left side, if you watch, there's the whole gang, they're called the tech bro, right?
Yeah.
The whole gang was there. And but one of the interesting thing, of course, Google was there. So Marlow was just saying, look, everyone sort of like kowtow already, right? Like Facebook and all those. But Google is still kind of grudgingly, in fact, they say the CEO, Sundar Pichai, the last 4 years, he did not speak to Trump, not even one time.
Wow.
But only recently, he called Trump and kind of congratulate Trump because, the McDonald incident was the most searched item in Google.
Yep.
So he called Trump just to congratulate. It's kind of like a bit of peace offering. But here's what Alex Marlow said. Well, you probably can't defeat an entity as big as Google, with their control and even with AI, things like that. AI is going to replace Google search, but Google search just have so much, it's still so dominant. Everything you go Google, right? But he said, look, if you cannot defeat them, you can coerce them into values that align with you. So Trump doesn't need to kill Google. He doesn't need to use antitrust to break it. But he will say, look, you shouldn't censor, and I think he will have ways to do it. So that is part of the whole battle for culture. You can't dominate everyone, but you can give them enough incentive in terms of carrot and stick.
Yep.
So that's very interesting. I felt like there's so much opportunity worldwide. But then when you look at Malaysia, we seem to drift towards the globalist side, right? With our Prime Minister now in Davos.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah. So anything else like really capture your imagination for the inaugurations, or you want to talk about, what's the outlook for Malaysia, you think?
Actually, I think the most inspiring part was that Donald Trump had an encounter. I think
he mentioned that, right?
Yeah, a real sort of encounter where literally he was just referencing back to that near assassination attempt where his life was almost being taken away just literally by 1 centimeter. And had it not been for the hand of God, I think it's like almost like
he used that term, right?
Yeah, no one can like unseen it. I mean, when you see that video, and he was just referencing it, and he was just saying that I was saved by God to make America great again, and he linked it back to like the whole American having that manifest destiny. And I think that's something that Malaysia as a whole, I think even for our prime minister, he needs to think what is the main purpose of him being elected as the prime minister. I think it goes to any one of us. I mean, even normal people, we need to think what is our purpose here on earth. And when you have that, and when you have that sort of vision, I think your life is so much more interesting. Your life is so much more meaningful. So I think that's just the sort of thing where we don't even, I guess we really, really had to break away from that mindset of being just average and to hey, there's possibility of making it true and making things great again. So I think that's something that Malaysia as a whole, the nation itself, I think we could aspire to be great again.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the word manifest destiny. I know it's a very American concept, and they always felt like they have a personal destiny, they have a corporate destiny. But that whole phrase is kind of built upon a belief in a God. Malaysia, of course, there are many religions and things like that, but I would say most people subscribe to some kind of God. And if you believe in a creator, you believe in a deity, that means you should believe that there is a destiny for individual and also corporately. And I really totally agree with you that our leaders should look at what will make Malaysia great. And I know people will be like, oh, that's plagiarizing Donald Trump's slogan, but it's such a correct slogan, right? I mean, one of the great story we sometimes we talk here on the show, Argentina, Javi Milei, look at the kind of, last year he was at Davos and he was like attacking the socialists, he was attacking the global, and everyone was showing him the eye rolling. And look at what an economic miracle Argentina has achieved. So Malaysia is so blessed, with natural resources, with people. We always say, look, so many people in Asia, Southeast Asia, even China, Hong Kong, Taiwan. Every time we meet all these kind of people, they always say, look, it's so nice to do business here in Malaysia because of the people. Your English is good, your system is not difficult. But we kept squandering, right? But I really hope there will be a turnaround because eventually you run out of opportunity to de-squander, So, yeah, I think that's really one of the themes for 2025, right? That even as we face with many economic challenges, what would, if Trump begin to do tariff, remember the first Trump administration, the tariff did benefit Malaysia.
Yep.
A lot of factories come here and things like that. But of course, because of tariff, recently I heard 40% of solar industry in Malaysia will shutter. So you have, you win some, you lose some. But our leaders should look at what is the interest of Malaysia rather than what is the interest of the globalists.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think I want to end with this, Prime Minister Anwar kind of commented on... I have to say, in regards to dealing with Donald Trump so far, I think he's neutral and quite good. I mean, he's known for that, right? I mean, except for the Palestine issue, which he kind of went overboard. But most of the times, he kind of tread the line quite well. And he's like, well, it's unfortunate that United Nations is pulling out from Paris Accord, but we will continue, we are very committed and things like that. So, but I just hope, regardless of whatever commitment you have to the global order, you will want to prioritize your people and your nation. So I think we should really strive to, do something that will cause our leaders to make this nation great. And I think at the very least, the voters should demand for that.
Yeah, I think that would be some great outlook that we could begin to think of. I mean, because the whole thing about Trump's re-election is literally a people's mandate, and he won like the popularity vote. So I think that's something. I think there's a way, because when the glass ceiling over all these lies from the mainstream media, all these lies from the established politician, when it has been shattered, it is shattered. So I think that's really the good news.
So I do agree with you, and I feel there will be this opportunity here. So do we have to suffer like 4 years of Biden?
I hope not.
Yeah, but I really hope. I mean, we suffer a lot under Barisan Nasional and things like that. So will people learn? But anyway, we don't have... I think our time is out already. But any of the topics, if you've seen in recent time, you want us to revisit, the whole DEI and things like that, just like a massive topic, In fact, I think one of the future show we really want to do, I want to talk to some of the people in the education sector, because I think Malaysia DEI really, of course, we talk about civil service, but civil service and education, right, is really where DEI is most. And it would be good if we can get, I don't know, get some Malay guests and things like that, because
that would be very, very fun indeed.
Yeah, I think we should. And those who are really prepared to talk honestly, because I know many people, even Malays, are not happy with affirmative action. They know it's not helping their people. But would anyone have the courage to do it? And even Mahathir, Prime Minister Anwar, from time to time, they hinted it's not a good thing, right? Mahathir keeps saying he had to take away the tongkat and things like that. But every time they can't go the next step for one reason or whatever. It's a stronghold, I guess.
Yeah, let's find some people.
All right. So I think that's all the time we have for today. So until next time, bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.